Yeah, so hello everyone once again, and welcome to the Book and Claim Community first webinar of 2015. We're really excited to have you here, and we have a couple of interesting updates to share with you, which my colleague Quentin Barnes would be walking you through. So I'd like to quickly run through the agenda for today. Quentin, if you may. Yeah. So for today's schedule, as I earlier said, it will be a welcome and intro to the book and claim community, given a few administrative details of what's been happening, also to welcome you to the new year and share some exciting updates. Then we'll move also to reporting and targets updates to share some vital information from the reporting agencies such as SBTi and GHGp. Then we move on to the core of today's webinar, where we have a case study that would highlight book and claim in action and compare it to our principles and best practices. Then we leave the floor open for a question and answer round where you can already put some questions and answers in the chat, and would be happy to answer that immediately or get back to you. So if you're as ready as I am, we can hop into it right now. Thank you.
All right. Well, I echo Ajoka's sentiment, welcoming you to this book and claim community webinar. There's a lot of excitement in the air, and I'm even here at the Smart Freight Center office where everyone's super excited for Smart Freight Week. And you might hear a little bit of that excitement behind you, so behind me rather. So please excuse me. Um, but no, this is a webinar series that we're really trying to continue as best as possible to communicate out to the over almost 1,000 folks who have connected into this work from over 300 organizations. So welcome and thank you for your contributions. Couldn't do it without you. Just a quick rundown again of why we're here ultimately. It may seem obvious, but the climate above us, the climate of commercial practices and decarbonization practices in between our organizations, kind of demands a certain level of cooperation just to get products to market, just to move these goods around these fun, complex shipping yards, and like the one pictured here. But it also demands a cooperation on decarbonization efforts that the world hasn't seen before. And systems such as book and claim, flexible chain of custody systems can enable greater cooperation, connect supply and demand, but they also come with great responsibility that in order to connect folks, just as if we had used that fuel in our own vehicle, just as if we had acquired that transportation service in our own inventory, that we hold this responsibility high and take care at each step in the process. So what we're here to do is to reduce duplication as the book and claim community, to serve as a central hub and to communicate that work to the outside world. We're trying to be one place where folks can come for some of this basic information, as well as get advanced guidance, advanced practice, and have free access to it. So for that, we thank the governing board, the 10 organizations that are here, as well as the strategic partners who are part of the book and claim community here in year 2. And from everybody at SFC, thank you. I thank also my colleagues at RMI. Really appreciate it. Claire and Esther here today, as well as anybody else. And of course, as that purple finger indicates, you as well. Couldn't do it without you as you're out there practicing day in, day out. So one of the very exciting things that we advertised in the newsletter and wanted to talk about today was the principles and best practices for book and claim and heavy transport. You know, this was a document that a host of experts came together to put together I mean, ultimately it was started in 2023, intense work through the spring of 2024 in that first year of the book and claim community, and then we published it in last summer. This was essentially trying to figure out what are the things that everyone can agree upon. What is it that we all can agree upon? And served really as a base for us. You know, of course, SFC and RMI have certain things that we've done as practices, but we, especially in the first year, really tried to create this neutral space and create this spot for this principles and best practices document to be yours, to be what everybody in the community can work on. So thank you to the 48 individuals, as well as the 35 supporting organizations who were able to sign onto the document. And what we're really excited about today is that we're announcing that we're going to be opening that document up again. We closed it off after about a month and a half of asking for folks to sign on, and many people have said, "Hey, how can I get involved? Can I put my name on it as well?" We wanted to let that document kind of live on its own for a while, and now we're opening it up again. So we're going to be opening this up until the end of April for organizations, more supporting individuals and more supporting organizations to put their name on it. And then we'll release an updated version of this principles and best practices document. Again, we want this to be yours. We also think that this is a great kind of trumpet and megaphone out to the world to show that there's actually a lot more alignment on book and claim and on market-based measures than there is a division. You know, we all in this professional decarbonization space can enthusiastically discuss many of the elements, but there's so much that we agree upon, and that message hopefully will help others realize that people are taking this very seriously in this space, and there really is kind of a solid base drumbeat that everyone is following. So, number one, please check out that document. It's not too long. It's just like 15 pages of content. It reads quite smoothly. And please indicate your support. Send us any questions at secretariat@bookandclaimcommunity.org if there are issues. And I think one of my colleagues maybe can drop that link into the chat there to get you there. I mean, pretty easy website, right? Bookandclaimcommunity.org. We weren't, you know, saving our resources on marketing with that simple URL. The other thing that we wanted to announce here is the education and FAQ page. You know, we've of course included a number of different capacity building and communication elements. We've had various webinars, you know, with you all over the days and years, and in each one of our newsletters we include that content. All of those newsletters are available on the website, but we brought together, you know, some of the glossary items, the FAQ questions, the what is status of book and claim in maritime, how do I explain book and claim to my colleagues, what is mass balance, what is a chain of custody, what does assurance mean, into one space to hopefully be a little bit more helpful and centralized for you and yours. So there is a link on the homepage of the book and claim community that takes you there. And we also have, you know, just beautiful little carousel of information. One of the items that we've gotten a lot of comments on is really helpful is this link to YouTube video on inventory examples for how to include book and claim in an emissions inventory. That was from our November 7th webinar. So definitely feel free to check that one out. And trying to keep it somewhat simple here as well to be accessible. So we'd love your opinion of that as well. So please check it out. And we will be expanding this. There's a lot of enthusiasm in many different corners of this book and claim effort. One of the next newsletters, for example, is it's really sourcing from all of that enthusiasm in the road group, for example, and is going to have, what is the status of road book and claim, right? So this is a set of resources that we're going to be continuing to add to, and we will highlight those additions in the newsletter. We'd also love your feedback. So as you check out that education and capacity building page, please give us your thoughts and let us know what sort of information would be helpful for you in your own activities and book and claim work. So those are just a couple ways to get involved. Again, going to be reopening the principles and best practices till the end of April. Your processes probably are require some sort of formality. So understand that as an organization, it might be a little bit harder to sign up than maybe as an individual. Coming in as both speaks volumes. Number two, connect back to that newsletter. Many of you might have heard about this webinar from there. Thank you. But let your colleagues know as well. That's a communication platform we're going to continue. And then the education page. So please let us know your opinion. It's been exciting to get to the point where we have this body of knowledge and this body of content, and we're just really excited that it can support you and your well booking and claiming out there in the wild. So thank you, and I'll pass it off to my colleagues for reporting and targets.
Thank you so much, Quentin. I believe reporting targets is on top of many of our mind as GHGp and SBTi have been evaluating the role of the market instruments like environmental attribute certificates and are expected to release update as their progress goes on. So here today, I just want to share briefly of what happened and what can we expect in this reporting and targets landscape. If we can move to the next slide, please. The first one I want to walk through is the greenhouse gas protocol revision process. As many of you might be aware, they have 4 main working groups in this revision process, focusing on corporate standard, scope 2, scope 3, and last but not least, the actions and market instrument group. There is another work stream that also have impact on transportation emission accounting reporting. It is the land sectors and removals guidance. From their newest announcement, the final land sectors and removals guidance is now expected to be delayed until Q4 2025. So that is a full year from the last time that was delayed, but we're hoping to take a look into that and see what the impacts are later this year. I think double clicking on the actions and market instrument working group, if we can go to the next slide. GHGp has been pretty transparent about the meeting minutes and sharing what that is publicly. And from the look of it, they have launched a 3-phase plan. Overall, I think you can expect some major updates towards the end of this year as an update or outcome from the continuing technical working group discussions that happened and will continue to happen. That outcome, I think, is likely going to show us what is the scope, what is the structure, or what are the considerations for actions and market instruments. But for more detailed methodologies, technical content, technical guidance, pilot testing results, and final standard, those won't be expected until later 2027 and 2028. If possible, I think I would like to invite Patrick from Smart Freight Center, who is also on the technical working group conversations with the actions and market instrument, to share a bit more insight with us today.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Esther. I mean, as Esther pointed out, the Greenhouse Gas Protocol does its best also to boost the transparency on all of this revision process. So all of these materials are also online in their repository. We can also post the link again into the chat in a second. Basically, what Esther had been saying, that's pretty much reflecting the discussion. And I mean, one thing that was also made very clear is that these outcomes that will be there end of this year, they will be in no way, shape, or form close to a standard or any guideline that's actually implementable or usable. As it says, it's a summary of recommendations and outcomes based on the discussions. These discussions are already going along quite well and intense, and we're already talking about things also that will be effective cross-sectorally, and we always have to make sure that the specifics also of the transportation sector are met. But thankfully, we have a good handful of transportation-related people in this process. Well, we'll make the best of it, and we'll also continue to inform you along the way.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Patrick. All right, if we can go to the next one, I'd also like to highlight the process of SBTi. As many of you might be aware, they are moving forward with their revision of the Corporate Net Zero Standard version 2. In February, they opened a recruitment for the expert working group that will focus on this version 2 draft and also the public consultation that would follow. The working groups have 5 key areas: scope 2, scope 3, removals, beyond value chain mitigation, and data. I think originally the draft was expected to be released in Q1 2025, but right now the latest updates has stated that it will be released no earlier than March. We're still expecting it to be published this year, so keeping a really close eye on what that corporate standard version 2 draft would look like and how that might have implications of our work in book and claim. And I think there is an open opportunity for everybody to participate once the draft is out. I think they promised at least a 2-month public consultation period. So I'll pause here really quick and see if there's any questions about the standards update or any thoughts on that. Please feel free to speak up, or you can also text in the chat box and we can respond. All right. Yes, thank you, Ajoka. Okay, maybe without any immediate questions, I'll move us to the next session. We also is pretty tight on time today, so I'll pass it to my colleague, Claire.
Thank you, Esther. Move the slides forward here, please, Quentin. All right. We're going to switch gears here for a little bit and talk about book and claim in action. So what's really happening out in the world? How can we take these standards processes or the principles and best practices and bring them to life to actually see book and claim successes out in the field? So next slide, please. The example we wanted to share today is one that's near and dear to particularly mine and Esther's hearts. Talking about the collective and aggregated procurement that the Sustainable Aviation Buyers Alliance, or SABA, they've completed multiple over the past couple of years, but we'll talk about the first collective procurement that took place in 2023. and primarily give you some update on what happened, how book and claim was a piece of that, but also, and most importantly for this context, explain how it relates to the principles and best practices document that we put together as the community that Quentin was talking about at the outset of the call, to help you all see how it can be applied in practice and help to guide purchases like this one. So, quick rundown for those that might not be familiar. The Sustainable Aviation Fuels Buyers Alliance aggregates demands of corporates for Scope 3 SAF certificates. The process went, by pulling together corporates, pulling together our members to come up with an aggregated demand number. And then we released an RFP to fuel producers and airlines with the aim of meeting that demand. We then reviewed proposals and procured and issued in this particular issuance, a procurement, 28,000 SAF certificates that met the SABA criteria for high integrity certificates. This is equivalent to 850,000 gallons of high integrity SAF and reduced an estimated 8,500 tons of carbon dioxide. So, drilling down then, the two questions are, how does this process and criteria align with the principles and best practices for heavy transport? And then how can we use this corporate journey and the corporate buyer's journey through this process to illustrate that for you all today? So next slide, please. Great. So to provide a quick rundown, these are the 11 principles found in the principles and best practices document. Each of these principles has additional bullet points that are the best practices, which will make more sense in a moment as Esther walks through them. Pardon me. But comparing the procurement across this document, we were able to find that, yes, indeed, it does follow all 11, which was exciting for us to review as a group. But that would be much too long to go through or force you all to sit through today. So we've pulled out 3 in particular that we'd like to highlight to give you an idea of how does this look in practice? What are these principles? What are these best practices? And how do they apply to real world examples? So without further ado, I'm going to pass it back to Esther to go through one from each of the 3 primary buckets here, using credible registries, ensuring additionality, and accurately procuring and transparently reporting certificates. So Esther, I'll turn back to you.
Thank you so much, Claire. All right, it's going to be a lot of kind of technical or functional explanations of how SABA is practicing it, and I hope this not only help you understand what that process looked like, but also help you to use as an example reference when you are thinking about designing or implementing book and claim. What are the considerations that you could also follow? So let's dive into it. If we can go to the next slide, please. I think the first one I want to touch here is on registries. There are a lot of credible registries, but SABA collaborate with SAF-C registry specifically, and kind of want to showcase you how it does adhere to the principles, best practices, and other related practices here. For the principles of using the credible registries, the emphasis is really on making sure the beneficiaries or the buyers would make a claim about those environmental attributes only after the issuance, transfer, or retirement of those certificates. And the way that SAF-C registry implement this is to make sure that first it does track the entire life cycle of the certificate when it is issued, transferred, and retired, and make sure that exactly is when the certificate is retired is when the buyers could start claiming that emission reductions, where it would have a check of questions specifically for buyers to indicate that. This kind of way is to make sure that all the SAF-Cs can have a clear owner at any given time and reducing the risks of errors or double counting in a way. Going to kind of the best practices for this principle, and really focusing on, from every step, if it is recorded on a secure and recognized system, and if all parties are involved and have a formal accounts on those registries. So for SAFC, it does allow all the different stakeholders, from fuel providers to airlines, logistic companies, and corporate buyers, to all create accounts there. And every transactions will be logged and tracked so that the buyers can verify that life cycle of the certificates. And this overall helps to build the trust and transparencies across that system. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Going to kind of another best practices. Here is kind of from the best practice and principles document. It's looking at how different systems, from basic track methods recording to more digital standardized registries, there is challenges at early stages versus later, more mature stages of development. And as for SAFC registry, that is a fully digital platform, and it allows following all the criteria that is listed here, and would also publicly display the record of the requirement to make sure that those are transparent. So really bleeding through some of the practices of the SAFC registry. I think there's many other principles and best practices that registries should consider and look into. I'll also give a couple examples of how SAFC registries is doing that. If we can quickly move to the next one, please. Thank you. Some of the principles I've listed here, 6 of them. I think I will spare you the time to walk through each one, but just want to highlight a couple essential ones, like SAFC registry would consider. For example, it does when a SAF certificate is issued in the registry, it includes a couple of detailed metadata information, like the SAF provider's information, the proof of sustainability ID, batch ID, or trader certifications. And tracking that could ensure that the SAF certificate is not duplicated or used twice. And this is kind of adhering to the principle 4 as an effort to prevent those double accounting cases. And there are many other practices, like SAFC registry would also use the SAF sustainability framework, like SBTi, and many other considerations that SABA has. So I think overall a key message here, I think, is in order for companies to really trust the SAF certificates, there must be a way to make sure the registry behind them is airtight, and have all the transparent and declarations from each step throughout the journey, so that the corporate customers can trust in your registry and can also have more confidence when they are disclosing the SAF certificates later on. All right. With that, I think I will move to the next topic, additionality. Another really important principles, and there are many reasons why this is so critical. A lot of the companies are, concerned, or like wants to have more confidence in that their voluntary claims are beyond what is already required. So for booking claim principles and best practices, it comes to a consensus where it recognizes the importance of additionality, and it encourage all the participants in a booking claim system to adhere to any agreed upon criteria for additionality when whether it's in their contractual documents or other format, and be transparent about any of the claims that they would make, especially in relation to the compliance obligations. And this is very core to SABA's approach as well. And SABA takes a really stringent approach to evaluating additionality, following the atmospheric benefit principle that was written to evaluate what type of regulations or type of compliances would be considered additional or not. SABA also has a website evaluation tool that kind of goes through those compliance obligations one by one that are all relevant to SAF and kind of share what that stand is. So having this kind of evaluation tool helps all the SABA customers to understand ahead of the time when they themselves might not be able to go through each of the regulations in details. So they would have an understanding, and this is agreed upon with all the SABA members as well, that this additionality approach would be what's applied in their contract. And all the fuel providers, airlines participating in this procurement round would agree and adhere to these criteria in the procurement. I would also spare you the details of each of the regulations. Maybe my colleagues could paste the additionality evaluation tool in the chat box for any folks who wants to look further into it. Thank you. All right, so thinking about how the journey is like for customer buyers, when they started to calculate, define their goals, they want to move to the next to set those criterias like additionality, sustainability framework. They go to select and contract. We help them select and contract those partners. They will take the steps to go through the booking claim in a registry. And lastly, they want to understand how they can account and report for those certificates in their annual sustainability report. So that is kind of at the end of that journey. After the certificates have been issued, SABA also takes a lot of steps to help the customers report and account for them transparently. If we can go to the next slide, please. I'll get into accounting and reporting. Thank you. So for the principles, it kind of highlights the importance for a mode matching criteria for accounting and reporting. This means a buyer certificate is mirroring their activity, transportation activity to be specific, means aviation emission certificates would match aviation emissions in their report, or shipping matches shipping and road matches road. For SABA's focus, as Clara mentioned briefly, is to support them to address Scope 3 aviation emissions. And I think that is largely from 1, business travel, and 2, air freight transport. Now, this is on a mode matching level, but going into the details and the weeds, corporate customers still need help to understand how exactly is different categories being calculated? What formula are you using? What emission factors there are? To help with that, SABA did partner with the World Economic Forum Clean Skies for Tomorrow back in 2022 to write the guidelines for how each step would look like for different personas in the aviation space to account and report for the SAFC purchases. And overall, transparent and accurate reporting is really important. And we help all the customers to make sure that they are doing what's the best practices is. Despite those guidance might be missing in broader standard like GHGp and SBTi. Definitely applause their efforts looking into it, but we're all aware that those final publication guidance will likely come any day soon. So having this accounting reporting guidelines helps serve as an interim guidelines for the SABA customers to make sure they are doing this with credibility and accountability. So that's a lot of technical content of how SABA is doing it and kind of how this follows the principles and best practices. I think just to wrap it up, at the end of the day, we're not just creating that system for buying and selling those SAF certificates, but we're also trying to build trust in this newer and more innovative way. And that trust comes from not only registries, not only ensuring additionalities, not only just transparent reporting, but many other elements in this principle and best practices document. So we don't have time to go through each of them, but we really encourage everyone to take a look at this and think and reflect on whether you've already have a system built or you're in the process of developing, want to think about how we can get this right at the beginning. And the more we can get this right, I think the more investment will be coming towards the decarbonization efforts for transport industry and beyond, and the faster we would move towards net zero goals. So with that, I'll pause here and see if I think I saw a couple chat comments. Appreciate everyone to help answer them. So happy to take any further questions here or offline. You can always email us at the secretariat at bookandclaimcommunity.org as well.
I was sitting in there chatting with the chatters. Are there any looking to you, a Joker, you asked any sort of questions we want to try and answer out loud? I think I was trying to give an answer to the hey SFC, or is there a list of registries that we recognize? Any derivative questions on that? Yeah, feel free to, as a Joker said, raise your hand. Happy to try and help.
Go ahead, Remy.
Yeah, thank you, Ajoka. Hello, everyone. Just a basic question. So this is SABA, this is for SAF. Do we have other registries for their domain, like road transport, for instance, for us?
A great question. I can jump in here if folks want to add in after me, but Remy, the simple answer is the SAF landscape is the most built out of the heavy transport sectors so far, but the others are following suit. I know on the maritime shipping side, there are 2 active registries right now. There's Catalyst, spelled with the K, and there's and 123 Carbon is operating a multimodal registry, which means they also 123 Carbon also operates a road book and claim registry as well. So emerging, but still in the early landscape with early actors starting to emerge. Hope that helps.
Thank you.
Anna, you may go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, my name is Hannah. I work for MRETS. We're the largest North American nonprofit registry currently issuing EACs for RECs, and we have our renewable thermal system right now as well. We are in the process of developing certificates for book and claim for renewable diesel, biodiesel, and ammonia. So we could help support other modes of transportation with book and claim, and I'd be happy to talk to anyone else about that offline if you're interested in learning more.
Thanks,
Love it.
Anna.
Thanks, Anna. Let's see, what other questions? I think there was a question about usual cost of using a registry. That came from Remy as well. Again, given SFC, we stick to our strength being accounting and reporting. I guess that question would be to ask if you guys could maybe say something about cost structures roughly. I don't know if that's
Yeah,
able
I
to
put a
happen.
link in. I put a link in the chat for.
Okay.
I can really only speak to the SAFC registries because that's the one that we run. But so I put the SAFC cost structure in the chat, but also it tends to be fairly open information. So a Google search should fill in for other folks. Also, I see Demiana's hand is up.
Thank you, Claire.
Yeah.
I have a question. I think I've been living under an assumption that it's wrong. But one of the things that we started looking at, and I'm one of the people that started the RSB back then, a long time ago on EPFL, and we talked about book and claim, and it was a no-go for sure at that time. But one of the things that I would always assume is we have book and claim as a measure to help the industry scale, right? And the objective is minimize cost, as long as you, as soon as you start reaching economies of scale, you reduce the cost. And one of my questions here is the book and claim, if it's used by others, meaning if the producer or the supplier of SAF decouples the benefits and supplies the SAF with the decoupling of the Scope 3 benefits and sells the Scope 3 benefits separately. Are we sure that that supplier and that transaction is actually reducing the price of SAF to the end user? Because I think that we have lost that part, or maybe it was my assumption that that was part of the entire book and claim, to start looking at how can we make this a smoother transition when this fuel is so much more expensive. So that's where I leave it. Thanks.
Sure. I think you're asking end user on the fuel user, correct? So is this actually bringing down the cost of physical fuel?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the aviation, the airline is trying to make up for the cost, whether it is a mandate or voluntary. They are paying more for fuel. Supposedly, with those Scope 3, they can make up the difference. But if they lose the power to own those Scope 3 because they were left with the fuel provider, they lose that. They lose that only chance to try to make up for that cost difference.
Yeah. Quentin, I see you're sharing something. Did you want to take this before I dive in? Quentin? Okay.
Apologies,
Quentin,
I was
it was on mute.
Okay.
I know. I was just trying to share the list of the principles and best practices. Trying to highlight the VIP guest of this webinar, kind of being this list. But I mean, these are all fabulous questions, and anything is game. If you guys want to focus in on any section of this, it is here, and I was just trying to facilitate that. But go ahead, Claire.
Got it. Okay, cool. Great fundamental question, Damiana. That's absolutely a concern and front of mind thing in book and claim. And so far, I mean, in the procurements that we've seen, that is the way that it works. The book and claim certificate helps to cover the green premium and lower the cost of the actual physical fuel. And the best we can do there is maximizing transparency of these purchases and processes, so that the physical fuel procurer understands the system that's happening upstream of them with book and claim certificates. Ideally, that is how it works. And if it's not working that way, then it would feel like a financial double dipping of selling a certificate and a price premium. If the certificate, one way to prevent it too, is if the certificate is connected to the physical volume, then the actual fuel is no longer claimable in its greenness, if that makes sense. So if we strip the environmental attribute and then resell the fuel as SAF again, then that would make the attribute would null or a double counting situation. So transparency helps us prevent that double counting issue. And therefore, if the certificate claims the greenness or strips it from the product, and therefore the product is being sold without claimable attributes, then the end user wouldn't pay a premium for it because there would be nothing that they're getting premium there. So traceability, transparency, and mitigating that double counting concern is how we overcome the double dipping of costs or help to ensure the premium is reduced. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, a little bit, because I still see the danger that an airline is offered a SAF that it's still more expensive, but only Scope 1 can be claimed, and then the fuel supplier keeps the Scope 3 and sells it, and they make money from they don't make money from the premium of SAF. It's just that the airline cannot take advantage of that little thing that they had, right? They're always going to pay more. They're going to claim the Scope 1, either mandated or voluntary, and that's their benefit. But they could also sell the certificate if they were owners of that Scope 3. But there could be a situation where their fuel supplier says, no, I'm only selling you Scope 1 and SAF. That's it. Scope 3, it's mine. And maybe that's not wrong, but but I was looking at, if we are trying to make this industry grow, the price is a problem here, and if the user is not getting the most benefit that they can to make up for the price difference, then that's going to make it grow slower. That was my only position. Maybe there's no answer to this, Claire, but I was wondering if we can do something, if there needs to be done something, and if within the principles that you have, is there something that we can guard ourselves to use, so that if I am an airline, I make sure that what they're selling me, it's 1 and 3, and if they're selling me 1, I don't pay for 3, and move on. So that was the idea.
Completely understand. I know that different registries have rules as well about order of retirement and connections of retirement to one another. So there are various stopgaps in place depending on which actors you're working with. So certainly on the table, we aim to prevent it, but I understand your concern there.
Yeah, and I'll just add that generally, what you're talking about is almost, almost at just like a basic reading of the principles. It's involved in a lot of these inherent intentions from book and claim, as you mentioned, trying to provide a price signal, trying to ensure that we're double counting. It's not in the, what you're talking about isn't exactly described in the best practices underneath accurately procure and transparently report certificates, but it's, you could almost say that, that's part of the intent here. This principles and best practices document was not intended to be comprehensive of absolutely every operation and activity within. It was trying to establish kind of a floor from where we can grow in the future. And that's one of the things that we're hoping to do in year 3, is take a look at this document and see, hey, what components might need to be added here. What elements can folks agree on in a principles and best practices, version 1.1, 2.0, whatever it would eventually be called. But in order to just kind of keep on developing the market, keep on showing folks what good book and claim and good market-based approach and transportation looks like. I hope that also gets at it generally. There is also, as you can imagine, a kind of a healthy respect for specific commercial practices, as well as there's a healthy respect for transparency in being encouraged generally across this space. Yeah, great question.
And a great first step. You always have to take the first step. There's going to be problems and mistakes, but I appreciate the first step that we're taking. First, meaning we took so many steps, but the first real written down step. So I appreciate it very, very much to the community.
Sure, and of course, many of those first steps were done by you all, as you noted, by RSB, as you noted. So luckily there are. The first step prize gets passed around and goes to many different people in this space. So thank you. Yeah, what other questions might folks have? Nina. And
Nina, you may go ahead. Your mic has been enabled. Yeah, it's been enabled now. If you would want to try.
It's showing it's muted on my end still, Joka. I don't know if you want to give it another try.
Yeah, I mean, I can only give access, but she would have to unmute it. But
Okay.
now it's unmutable, yeah.
And if Nina were having issues, feel free to write it in the chat and we can read it out for you, if that's helpful.
I'll give you one last swing. So now your mic is allowed, so you have to manually disable it.
all right.
We can give you a minute to type, Nina, if anyone else has a question. Sorry for the technical challenges.
But yeah, I mean, as we've gotten a lot of questions on many different portions of these principles and best practices. I think one of the places we got the most questions was actually on number 10, was on how to accurately procure and transparently report. You know, kind of how close matching needs to get done. Diving into things that are difficult or things that people think are important. You know, one of the important items and kind of where this group landed in number 10 was that, you know, the market for booked and claimed attributes is still young, and so we can encourage folks to match as closely as possible, and that there should be transparency in the role of certificates. In number 2, I'd be curious where second round would go in that. The idea that, you know, procuring, if you have, you know, short haul aviation, that maybe you should look for short haul attributes, things such as that. That was just to double click in on one of those principles and best practices. Let's see. All right, so yeah, Nina's asking the SBTi's expert group understand they have 1,000+ applications. Does the community have any insight on the timeline of when the groups will be formed? I can honestly say I do not have any insight on when they will be formed, other than what was formally suggested, that I think initially the goal was towards the end of March, beginning of April. And I salute them in that effort. If anyone else has other data on that, feel free to hop in.
No, actually, we also had a chat with them. I also heard a similar number about applications. If some of you happen to be at Smart Freight Week, that might be a hint, because we do have representation also from SBTi on a panel on the first day. That might be a good question to ask.
Patrick, encouraging the pressure campaign. All right, or not encouraging. Sorry.
Well, if no one asks the question, I will do it because I will be moderating that panel. But that's definitely an information that will be interesting, I think, to a lot of folks.
All right. Any final questions here in the last few minutes? Thanks for all the great ones so far.
Again, huge thanks to the contributing individuals for this first principles and best practices document. We're gonna, for those who are coming to Smart Freight Week, we are having a book and claim community party on the last day, and we'll be talking a little bit more about some of the principles and best practices. So hope to see you there. But again, thanks to all those who contributed to this document, as well as the other supporting individuals who indicated their support and supporting organizations. And you know, it's because of this enthusiasm that we decided to open up this document again. Again, we'll be opening it up until the end of April. We've got a couple other names and companies who have signed on in the interim, but again, we kind of had previously respected this published PDF, but we'll be excited to add them. I think a couple governing board members even, and other companies as well. So if you want to be represented here, that would be awesome. And again, it signals to this whole community at large, signals to folks like the SBTIs, like the GHGPs, that again, there is a lot more in common in this space, as everyone is figuring out how to best account and report, how to best track and trace, how to best certify sustainability attributes of book and claim transportation decarbonization. So thank you so much. We will probably be posting this recording to our illustrious YouTube as well, and you know, help us make it go viral, right? But no, that way you'll be able to see any of this other content and come back or share it with a colleague. So let's see. I think, yeah, there we are. Thank you so much. And stay tuned and keep in touch. Shoot us an email if we can help with anything. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.